Before GPS, before highways, before the concept of infrastructure even existed, Rome built something so extraordinary that we still drive on parts of it today. Over 250,000 miles of roads connecting an empire that stretched from Scotland to Syria, from Spain to the edge of the Sahara. But here, that's what they do and teach you in history class. These roads weren't built by some noble vision of connectivity. They were built by the most sophisticated tax collection system the ancient world had ever seen. And the roads weren't just for moving armies, they were for moving money. Welcome the money historian, where money, power, and history collide. And nothing is ever as simple as it looks. When you think about Roman roads, you probably imagine legions marching, merchants trading, maybe a chariot race or two. But beneath that image was something far more important. Rome had figured out how to extract wealth from conquered territories with ruthless efficiency, and the roads were the circulatory system that made it possible. No roads, no tax collection. No tax collection, no empire. It's that simple. Let's go back to the early Republic, around the 4th century before Christ. Rome was still a regional power, fighting neighboring Italian tribes, barely controlling anything beyond central Italy. And like every growing state, it faced a fundamental problem. How do you pay for expansion? Soldiers need equipment. Campaigns need supplies. Conquest is expensive. The answer Rome discovered would shape Western civilization for the next 1,000 years. Systematic taxation backed by physical infrastructure. The first major Roman road, Via Appia, was built in 312 BCE by a censor named Appius Claudius Caecus. History remembers him as a builder, but he was really a financial administrator. His job was managing state revenues and public contracts. The Via Appia wasn't just a road, it was an economic artery designed to connect Rome to the wealthy city of Capua, making it easier to collect tribute, move troops, and control commerce. The road paid for itself by making tax collection faster, cheaper, and more reliable. And here's the genius. Rome didn't just build roads randomly. Every major road corresponded to a conquered territory that needed to be integrated into the Roman tax system. When Rome defeated the Gauls, they built roads through Gaul. When they conquered Spain, roads appeared across the Iberian Peninsula. When Egypt fell, roads connected the Nile to Roman ports. The pattern was always the same: conquest, followed by roads, followed by taxes flowing back to Rome. The tax system itself was brutally efficient. Rome imposed multiple types of taxes on conquered provinces. The tributum was a direct tax on land and property, assessed based on regular census data. The portorium was a customs duty on goods moving through the empire, which meant every merchant using Roman roads was paying for the privilege. There were taxes on sales, on inheritances, on freed slaves, even a tax on urine because it was valuable for leather tanning. Rome found ways to monetize everything, but none of this works without infrastructure. Imagine trying to collect taxes from a province 500 miles away with no reliable roads. Your tax collectors travel for weeks through dangerous terrain. Bandits attack them. The money gets lost or stolen. Local governors pocket half of it before it reaches Rome. Chaos. The roads solved all of that. Suddenly, tax collectors could move quickly and safely. Provincial governors couldn't hide revenue because Roman auditors could show up unannounced. Merchants couldn't avoid customs duties because there were checkpoints at every major crossroads. The roads also enabled something even more powerful: the cursus publicus, Rome's imperial postal and courier system. This was essentially the ancient version of a government communications network, with relay stations every 15 to 20 miles where official messengers could change horses and keep moving. Tax records traveled this system. Financial reports from provincial governors went straight to Rome. If a region tried to underreport its revenue, the central government knew within days, not months. The Romans had invented real-time financial oversight 2,000 years before computers, and the roads themselves became profit centers. Rome charged tolls at bridges and mountain passes. They leased road maintenance contracts to private companies. The publicus made money by keeping roads functional and safe. Towns along major roads became commercial hubs because merchants needed places to rest, resupply, and pay customs duties. The entire system was designed to generate revenue while appearing to provide a public service. But here's where it gets dark. The cost of building and maintaining these roads was often pushed onto the provinces themselves. Local populations were required to provide labor, materials, and funding for roads that primarily benefited Rome. It was sold as development, but in reality, conquered peoples were being forced to build the infrastructure that made their own exploitation more efficient. They were paying for the chains that bound them to the empire. This created a feedback loop that powered Rome's expansion for centuries. Conquest generated plunder and tribute. That wealth funded more roads. Better roads meant better tax collection. More tax revenue funded more legions. More legions meant more conquest. The entire imperial machine was self-sustaining, and the roads were the mechanism that kept it spinning. Even the layout of Roman roads reveals their true purpose. They weren't built for comfort or scenic routes, they were built for speed and control. Roman roads are famously straight because the shortest distance between 2 points is a line. and time is money when you're moving tax revenue or suppressing rebellions. The roads bypassed difficult terrain, incorporated military engineering, and always led back to Rome. All roads lead to Rome wasn't poetry, was fiscal policy. The Romans also understood something modern governments are still grappling with. Infrastructure is a form of soft power. When you control the roads, you control commerce. When you control commerce, you control wealth. When you control wealth, you control everything else. Local rulers in conquered territories couldn't rebel effectively because they depended on Roman roads for trade. Merchants couldn't bypass Roman taxes because there were no alternative routes. The roads made resistance economically irrational, and the system worked stunningly well for centuries. At its peak, Rome was collecting taxes from over 50 million people across 3 continents, and almost all of it flowed through road networks back to the imperial treasury. The revenue funded aqueducts, public baths, the grain dole, military salaries, and of course, more roads. Rome became the wealthiest state in the ancient world, not because it conquered the most territory, but because it taxed that territory more effectively than anyone else. But here's the part history often skips. The roads also transmitted Rome's collapse. When the empire started weakening in the 3rd and 4th centuries, the same roads that brought wealth to Rome started draining it away. Barbarian invasions used Roman roads to move deeper into imperial territory. Trade routes that once enriched Rome became pathways for economic decline as provinces stopped sending tribute. The infrastructure that built the empire became the highway for its dissolution. And today, 2,000 years later, the logic hasn't changed. Modern nations still build infrastructure primarily to facilitate tax collection and economic control. Highways aren't just for commuters, they're for commerce, which generates sales taxes, corporate taxes, and customs duties. The interstate highway system in the United States, built in the 1950s, was justified as a defense project, but its real purpose was economic integration and revenue generation. China's Belt and Road Initiative is the same playbook: build infrastructure, expand economic influence, increase tax and trade revenues. Even digital infrastructure follows the Roman model. Why do governments invest in broadband networks and 5G? Because digital commerce generates tax revenue, and you can't tax what you can't track. The internet is the modern Via Appia, and every transaction flowing through it is subject to the same logic that Roman censors understood 2,000 years ago. Infrastructure enables extraction. So here's what the Roman roads really teach us. Infrastructure is never neutral. It's always built to serve power. The Romans didn't build roads out of generosity. They built them because roads made empire profitable. And every government since has learned the same lesson. You don't control territory by occupying it. You control it by building the systems that make wealth flow toward the center. The next time you drive on a highway, or use a bridge, or benefit from public infrastructure, ask yourself, who does this really serve? Because the Romans knew the answer 2,000 years ago. Infrastructure is built by the state, for the state. Everything else is just a convenient side effect. If this changed how you see the world, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.